Yes, I know, I'm late. In my defense, I didn't have access to my PC for most of December and most of January. This video was actually recorded 2 days after the episode, but that's why I couldn't edit it. I had to ask someone to help me edit it, but let's just say he took her sweet time. But I'm sure they had a good reason for taking so long though.
Lunes, martes, miércoles,
¡Ay, qué flojera existir!
jueves, viernes, sábado, domingo.
So consider this a teaser for the real video I'm working on. It shouldn't be long before it's out. Oh yeah, this is the person who helped me out. I like how their work turned out. Let me know what you think of their work on this video. Well, that's all. Enjoy.
No, te
Te
juro,
juro
te juro que mi corazón ahora mismo está... Es que cuando salió Kane fue... Dios. Dios mío. Estoy genuinamente sudando, huevón.
Estoy sudando yo también, ven, ayuda. Espera, me voy a mutear con ustedes.
Ok, fue interesante. Es que es que tengo tanto guardado ahora mismo que puta madre, te juro que yo también me voy a poner a editar en un momento de otro.
Hasta yo me dije,
Wow.
puta, este va a ser el último episodio, este va a ser el último episodio. Estamos realmente viendo el último episodio del Circo Digital.
Uy,
¿Cómo van a ser 8 episodios? La mamá.
Stand ready for my arrival, worm.
No time for intros, let's get started right now because I don't have time. And it's starting to rain right now, but it doesn't matter, it'll be a video with rain in the background. Okay, this is almost perfect. Literally, it's been a long time since I've seen such a solid script in a series. There's only one thing you could say about it, but everything else is perfect. This has to go down in history as an example of how to do a perfect plot twist. Not one, but 2 plot twists using what seemed like an obvious plot twist but was actually fake to set up the real one. Alright, let's start piece by piece analyzing what we see here. The mysterious mannequin that everyone thought would be important is introduced. It's presented as a programmer for the game who was assigned a mannequin, which is why it's gone unnoticed by Kane. And it says that there's a way to escape. It seems to have a past with Kinger that it doesn't want to talk about, and after an elaborate plan that consists of stealing the keys from Kane to get into his office and shut down the game, it turns out that it was all a lie. It was all about one of Kane's adventures, a very twisted one. The episode plays with you. It makes you think you know what's going to happen only to shatter your expectations and do something completely different. The best part is that the clues it leaves you make you think something else entirely. But when you look back, it makes sense! At first you might think, I don't know, maybe Abel is some kind of villain who wants to take control over the circus or something like that, since he was introduced so abruptly. But no, he's an NPC, and it makes sense! That's why he didn't want Kinger involved, because he could have deduced what's going on, but it was handled very well. They even used the cliche of showing a mysterious pendant that seemed important only to turn out to be nothing in the end. Kane's manipulations as well as the characters make you believe this lie for a second. For a moment, you think Abel is a human who resents Kinger and that he'll be some kind of villain. Maybe, or something more important, that some of what he says is real. That is not the easiest explanation. That is not what you think. For a minute, you wonder, what if? What if there's more to it? What if it really is a person? Only for the most obvious option to turn out to be the right one. The episode plays with your mind, and what it reveals is even more unsettling. But to understand that, we need to talk about the characters. Jax represents the audience in this episode. He's the one who doubts from the start, suggesting that it's most likely just another adventure, something no one else wants to believe for a reason. No one believes Kane is cruel enough to do that to them, but Jax, thanks to his nihilism, is able to see through the lie. But like the viewer, for a moment he believed too. For a moment he thought there really was something more. He had faith for a second that it was something more, that Kane wouldn't fall so low. That's why I was able to empathize with him for the first time. His maniacal breakdown isn't just because of the event itself, but because it confirmed all of Jax's beliefs. The moment he began to believe, opening up, life kicked him in the balls, reminding him that he lives in an existential nightmare where nothing truly matters, where everything depends on the whims of a godlike host incapable of understanding it in the slightest.
God looks stupid.
It's all a show, and he's the funny one. He also leaves behind a darker theory about abstractions, which we'll discuss later.
Yes! Yuri! Okay. Yuri! 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 Yes! Yes! Let's go! Oh my god! I love Google! I love Google! I love the strategy!
Please fuck already! You idiots! Go have sex for 2 days straight, non-stop! What are you waiting for? Gooseworks, you're not fooling me! This is Yuri!
Who?
What I have to say about him, I'll say it when I address the elephant in the room.
Leave me here to rot! If this isn't good enough for you, then I have to make it perfect!
What I said is coming true. He's body! He's literally body! He's becoming body! Kane crossed the line and is officially a threat. But it makes sense with his character. Becoming body is the logical conclusion to his character. It's what the series has been building up. We need to understand how we get to this point. And the truth is, Kane isn't inherently bad. Kane has a single job, one thing to do in his life, a single purpose that gives him meaning to his entire existence, and that is to create adventures to entertain the players, and that's measured by player satisfaction. Furthermore, the fact that they love you is an indicator of that. How would it feel failing in that? Perhaps with constant complaints, or being asked to do only their suggestions, or being ignored even when you try to help them get along better. We've seen how important external validation is to Kane, something he's not getting, a sign that he's failing on his purpose. This is made worse because, as we saw in episode 3, he's incapable of handling serious situations. He's an AI, so he's not capable of understanding human emotions. So throughout the series, we've seen him become more and more desperate to achieve his goal. And as I said in my previous video, in his desperation and his inability to understand humans, he's going to do increasingly extreme things to achieve it, pushing the boundaries. And I think we all underestimated the gala and the favorite character of World and how much danger it did to Kane. Remember, Kane doesn't understand human emotions, but he's capable of feeling them. It's not that he lacks the emotions, he has them and he feels them, but he doesn't understand them. And although it stems from his desire for validation, he does want to be loved. He does want to be friends with the humans. Imagine being alive to please someone, and that person is not only constantly showing their dissatisfaction with what you do for them, but it's making it very clear that they don't care. I know you'll say it's Kane's fault for wanting to force others into his adventures, but that's all he exists for. None of his actions are malicious. But the fact that no one voted for him as favorite character was the hardest blow he received. What Kane is going through is enough to drive anyone in this situation insane. And as I said in my previous video, what will happen is that Kane will take increasingly extreme measures to feel like he's not failing in his purpose, because if he fails, he has no reason to live. Or at least that's how he sees it. He's an AI with a purpose, a program with a function. If it doesn't fulfill its function, there will be no reason to use it. This is the problem. This is the first time Kane crosses a line where he resorted to personal and harsh information to feel validated. The adventure wasn't to satisfy the players, but to satisfy himself. Kane knows how much the characters wanted to leave the circus, and he used that to try and validate his fragile ego. It's true that he didn't intend to hurt them, but he also doesn't seem to have given much thought to the harm he was causing to them, since what he wanted was to feel good about himself. and that led him to not think twice about committing an act that hurts the players. He didn't want to hurt them, but when he went on these adventures, he wasn't thinking about the players, but about himself. Or perhaps it's not the first time. There's a theory that suggests that Kane crossed the line before. This confirms that he can enter other people's minds. What if that has side effects, like accelerating the abstraction process? Jax, despite everything, seemed fine, and now he's on the verge of abstraction? What if manipulating the players' minds accelerates the abstraction process? Maybe even Jack's hallucinations wasn't a hallucination, but Kane impersonating Ribbit to try and help him, but only made things worse. But there's an even darker theory that will negate what I said earlier based on Kane's attitudes towards Kinger. It's already known that Kane watches the players all the time with his hundreds of eyes. In fact, that would explain why the way to escape hell in episode 3 was by not breathing, since Kane was spying on them. So it wouldn't be far-fetched to think he saw Kinger's healing butterfly and considered him a threat to his plans, which is why he wanted to keep him away. This is already bad because Kane shouldn't perceive players as a threat. But it gets worse. What if his wife's death isn't the cause of his madness? What if Kane caused Kinger's madness? Think about it. If Kinger can manipulate the game, he could create adventures that others would prefer to Kane's. Furthermore, in his eyes, if he doesn't fulfill his purpose, he has no reason to live. And Kinger would be the only one with the power to unplug him. If Kane has been acting beyond his lifespan, he may have developed a sense of self-preservation, a will to live that is threatened by failing in his mission. And being a programmer, Kinger is the only one who could shut him down. This is the dark version of the theory I presented in the previous videos, because then, perhaps unwillingly, Kane is acting maliciously, harming the players, perhaps even manually causing the first abstraction. This would be even worse than Buddy, since at least Buddy was insane, but he didn't intend to harm those he wanted to please. Here we will be talking about a Kane who has already crossed the most important boundaries. We're not talking about an AI desperate to justify its existence that went to extremes to please others, but rather, I have no mouth and I must scream. Personally, I don't like this idea because Kane isn't supposed to be evil, not the villain, but an antagonist. But in any case, the current result is the same. Kane is a constant danger, whether out of malice and selfishness, or accidentally by trying to achieve his goals at all costs without thinking about the consequences. On the Badiometer, we're on night 4, and night 6 is when Buddy's mental breakdown occurred. So Kane is a ticking bomb. The only thing preventing things from exploding is that Kane still respects the CIRCUS terms and conditions, but perhaps that will change with this scene. As I said before, the moment Subal asked for it, to me, Kane genuinely considered the idea, and that clashed with the terms and conditions. So, as a safety mechanism, he erases his own memory before doing anything forbidden. The moment he starts disobeying the terms and conditions, that's when they'll value the Kane they knew before. This is going to end very badly. The characters have to stop thinking about themselves and start thinking about Kane for his own good. I know it sounds insensitive given their situation, but they have a ticking bomb to deal with to prevent the CIRCUS from turning into FNaC 1 Remake. I know this video seemed more like video analysis of Kane's character, but honestly, there's not much more to say. Kane literally erased everything we knew up until now. In fact, that's possibly not even his office. Maybe he just built it for the adventure. All the information we had, almost all the lore and clues we had, became meaningless in this episode. We're starting from scratch. Beyond the fact that Kane doesn't understand the outside world and the characters, there's not much to talk about. Except for Jax, who's still suffering from what happened in the previous episode. The only bad thing is that this episode feels more like a 2-part special. And it's only half an hour long. In the end, I was left unsatisfied by the abrupt cut. But honestly, the only thing that kept it from being perfect writing was this moment.
Hey, don't keep information from us if you know something. What happened between you and Kinger?
It'll be clear soon enough.
It made perfect sense that the characters didn't have time to question Abel, since there was always some kind of interruption, except for that scene. There, they had to grab him and demand an explanation and tell him, hey, we're not going to move forward until you tell us everything. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I hope my ramblings have entertained you, and I'll see you later. Bye bye!
This way. Don't you see? All of this was for you. And all you can do to